In the shadow of the Colorado Rockies, where the wind howls like a wounded beast, Sarah Williams wiped down the counter of her diner, Midnight Haven, for what she feared was the last time. The foreclosure notice lay crumpled beside the register, a stark reminder that 7 days from now, the bank would claim the place her late husband had built with calloused hands and endless dreams. At 52, Sarah was no stranger to hardship, raising 2 boys alone after the accident, scraping by on tips from truckers and locals who barely noticed her anymore. Tonight, though, the storm outside felt like the final blow. Snow lashed the windows in furious sheets, burying Highway 70 under a blanket of white fury. She counted her till, $47.12. Enough for a week's coffee, maybe. As she locked the door at 10 p.m., headlights pierced the blizzard, 15 motorcycles, engines growling defiantly against the gale, pulling into her lot like ghosts from a forgotten road movie. The lead rider, a giant of a man named Jake with a salt and pepper beard frozen into spikes, pounded on the glass. His eyes, sharp as switchblades, softened when she cracked the door. "Ma'am, storm's got us pinned. Any chance for shelter? We'll pay what we can." They were Hell's Angels, patches gleaming on leather vests weathered by 1,000 miles. Skulls, wings, the word, Colorado, stitched in red thread. Sarah's heart stuttered, stories of bikers turning diners into brawls flashed in her mind, but the cold pouring in carried their exhaustion like a plea. Without a word, she stepped aside. "Come in. Coffee's hot. Food's on me." They filed in, 12 men and 3 women, stamping snow from boots that could crush gravel. No, the title said 12, but memory plays tricks in storms. It was 15 souls, dripping and shivering, filling her booths like an invasion of reluctant giants. Sarah fired up the grill, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest. Pancakes sizzled, bacon curled, eggs fried golden. She portioned out the last of her stew, stretching it with bread heels and apologies. "Ain't much, but it'll warm you." Jake, the leader, watched her with quiet respect. "This place, it's a haven, all right." One rider, a wiry woman called Red with tattoos snaking up her arms like vines, helped Sarah clear plates, her voice gravelly from years of wind and cigarettes. "You didn't have to do this, darlin'. Roads like this, folks pass you by." As the night deepened, stories unfolded over steaming mugs. Marcus, a bear of a man with a missing tooth from a bar fight in '98, confessed he'd pulled off the road here 12 years back, chest seizing like a vice. "Thought I was done for. This diner, you gave me aspirin, called the doc. Saved my hide." Sarah blinked, the memory fuzzy, a trucker, red-bearded, sweating through his shirt. "That was you." Laughter rumbled, thawing the room. Tommy, the youngest at 24, fresh from a stint in the Marines, sketched a crude map on a napkin, showing routes they'd ridden from Denver to Deadwood. Danny, the kid who looked lost, shared how the club had pulled him from a gutter in Albuquerque, given him a bike and a family when blood kin failed. They weren't monsters, they were wanderers, bound by loyalty fiercer than any small-town gossip. Sarah listened, her own tales slipping out, the diner named for midnight confessions from drifters, the husband lost to a logging rig, the sons scattered to cities that swallowed them whole. By 2 a.m., the storm raged on, but inside, a fragile peace settled. Cards slapped on tables, low-stakes poker with toothpicks as chips. Red sang a blues tune, voice cracking on the high notes, about a lover left in Reno. Marcus dozed in a booth, his snores a counterpoint to the wind. Sarah caught Jake's eye across the counter. "Why risk this weather? Ain't safe." He shrugged, fingers tracing a faded eagle patch. "Freedom's got a price, ma'am. But places like this, they remind us why we ride." She nodded, pouring refills, feeling seen for the first time in years, not as the Widow Williams but as a keeper of flames. Dawn crept in gray and reluctant, the blizzard easing to flurries. Sarah rose stiff from her cot in the back, brewing a fresh pot. The riders stirred, folding blankets, leaving tips pressed under saucers, more than her last month's take. Jake clasped her hand at the door. "Debts paid tenfold, if you ever need." His words trailed as he stepped out. Then it started, a low rumble, building like thunder rolling uphill. Not 15 bikes. Hundreds. The parking lot overflowed with chrome beasts, engines idling in a symphony of loyalty, 300 strong, spilling onto the highway, colors from chapters across the West, California wings, Texas skulls, Nevada flames. They'd come from whispers in the night, Jake's calls rippling through the network like a signal fire. Bikers dismounted, forming lines that snaked to the door. Women in bandanas carried coolers of pies, men hauled crates of supplies. "Heard you fed our brothers," one gravel-voiced elder said, handing her an envelope thick as a Bible. Inside, $15,000 in cash, anonymous but unmistakable. For the haven, truckers joined, semis honking salute, locals gawking from plows. By noon, Midnight Haven buzzed with plates clattering, laughter echoing. Sarah stood at the register, tears blurring the scene, as Red hugged her fierce. "You're one of us now." The engines roared once more in farewell, a thunderous ovation that shook the windows, then faded into the mountains. But the diner lived, foreclosure burned that morning, replaced by deeds in her name. And on quiet nights, when snow dusts the peaks, Sarah still hears the rumble, a reminder that kindness rides eternal. Years later, when the diner became a waystation for the lost, Sarah would tell the tale not as hers, but theirs, a circle of strangers who turned a blizzard into brotherhood. One rider, Tommy, returned with a bride on his arm, their wedding reception spilling across booths still scarred from that night. Marcus opened a garage down the road, fixing bikes and hearts. Red sent letters from the coast, her songs now on vinyl, dedicated to the woman who warmed more than stew. And Jake, he rode in every solstice, beard grayer, eyes unchanged, toasting, to havens in the storm. In the end, it wasn't the money or the roar that saved Midnight Haven. It was the quiet truth. In opening her door, Sarah found her tribe among the thunder. But wait, that was the heart, yet the echoes lingered in smaller tales, fragments woven into the club's lore, each a spark from that fateful night. Here's one, Danny's redemption. The kid who'd shivered under a borrowed jacket confessed over cold eggs that he'd stolen a bite to escape an abusive foster home, landing in juvie at 16. The angels found him there, not as prey but project, teaching him wrenches over weapons. That blizzard, Sarah's stew was the first meal he'd eaten without looking over his shoulder. Months later, he rode back alone, toolkit in hand, to fix her ancient fridge. "You gave me warmth when I was ice inside," he said, tools clinking like promises. Danny stayed on, becoming the diner's mechanic, his laugh chasing shadows from the corners. When his first tattoo bloomed, a phoenix on his forearm, he inked Sarah's initials beneath, a silent vow. Another, Red's lullaby. The wiry singer with storm-gray eyes hadn't sung since her brother's overdose in '09, voice buried under grief and gravel roads. But in the diner's glow, with flames dancing in the hearth, she let it out, a raw ballad of lost highways. Sarah, wiping tears she didn't know she had, joined in the chorus, her alto steady as the Rockies. By morning, Red scrawled lyrics on a menu, Blizzard's Grace, gifting it to Sarah. It became her club's anthem, recorded in a dusty Reno studio, proceeds funding shelters for runaways. Red's voice cracked on stage once, dedicating it to the cleaner who swept away my silence. Sarah kept the napkin score framed behind the counter, a melody that outlasted engines. Then Marcus's echo. The bear with the gap-toothed grin never forgot his heart scare, the aspirin Sarah pressed into his palm like a lifeline. That night in the storm, he shared how the angels rebuilt him, not with pity, but purpose, sponsoring his mechanic school after the hospital bills buried him. In return, he led the dawn convoy, 50 bikes from his chapter alone, engines tuned to purr like guardians. Back home, he named his garage, Haven Repairs, donating free fixes to single moms. When Sarah's truck sputtered years on, Marcus trailered it away, returning it gleaming, with a note, "Payback's a rumble, not a roar." Jake's shadow rode deepest. The leader, scarred from a Nam chopper crash, carried ghosts in his saddlebags, comrades lost to rice paddies and rearview mirrors. Sarah's diner was his third shelter that winter, the first two turned them away, doors barred like judgments. Her welcome cracked something in him, and in the quiet hours, he sketched club charters on napkins, dreaming aloud of toy runs for kids like his niece, taken too soon by fever. The 300 engines. His call, chapters converging like rivers to sea. He never took credit, slipping away at dusk, but left a custom patch, a diner sign wreathed in wings. Sarah sewed it to her apron, wearing it through expansions, the patio added for overflow rides, the mural of mountains and machines. Tommy's crossroads marked a fork in youth. The Marine vet, haunted by desert sands, rode with the pack to outrun flashbacks. Sarah's pancakes, fluffy as forgotten comforts, coaxed out his story, a buddy's last laugh echoing in his skull. She listened without flinching, sharing her boy's letters from afar, one a teacher, the other adrift. Inspired, Tommy founded Road to Read, bikers delivering books to rural schools, his first drop at Midnight Haven's Story Hour. He wed there, under string lights, vowing vows that echoed her kindness. In storms, we shelter. Vince's forge was quieter, the tattooed blacksmith who'd hammered horseshoes before Harleys. Stranded with a busted chain, he stoked Sarah's fire through the night, coals glowing like embers of home. A widower himself, he spoke little but carved wooden angels from scraps, leaving one on her sill, a guardian with diner keys. The convoy brought his kin, a forge troop welding gates for her lot, etched with, "Enter freely." Vince's angels multiplied, perched on shelves, warding off more than wind. Little Tom's gentle thunder defied his size. At 5 feet 6 inches, the club's tiny terror rocked the room with bear hugs, but the storm revealed cracks, lullabies for Danny, hushed tales of a daughter lost to custody wars. Sarah's counter became confessional, he admitted fearing fatherhood's failures. Her nod, "You already are," lit him. He led the toy brigade yearly, his sleigh overflowing, roaring engines softened to chimes for the kids. Tom's patch read, "Haven's heart," stitched by Sarah's own hand. Finally, the unnamed writer's whisper, a ghost in the group, scarred face hidden under a hood, voice a rasp from throat cancer silenced too soon. He sketched maps not of roads, but stars, teaching Sarah constellations through frosted panes, Orion's belt as a brother's lost ride. In the roar's wake, an envelope arrived unsigned, seeds for a victory garden behind the diner, blooming wildflowers that drew bees and bikers alike. His whisper lingered in petals, a final bloom of gratitude. These threads, spun from one blizzard's loom, wove a tapestry larger than leather or chrome. Midnight Haven stood not just as eatery, but legend, a nexus where the shy cleaner became saga, her 8 echoes roaring eternal in the rearview of kindness.